Oh, God, this is what you get when you set your expectations too high. I have a lot of moaning to do this week, so feel free to disagree with me in the comments. That's not to say this episode was bad per se, it just didn't seem to tickle my fancy too much and reminded me what Season 5 got wrong in several ways. I'd rather be getting busy with my Order of the Phoenix video in all honesty, so don't expect this to be anything too spectacular. Either way, I said I'd review this series and I've almost done so. Mildred, you have the floor.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Our first and final section depicts Lady Crane accepting the advice of Arya and giving out a performance that stuns the crowd more than her performance 2 weeks ago. This is quite good as we can now see Crane's reasoning for looking after Arya when she sees her in that cupboard covered in blood. Sadly, we see Arya looking the most like the Hunchback of Notre Dame in this shot here, but she makes a very interesting point that will probably never have an answer. What is west of Westeros? I answer, who cares? We've already got enough on our plates with all these locations on 2 land masses, why do we need any more? I have to say Lady Crane's death I definitely saw coming, but bloody hell it was intense. It's quite sad too, seeing as Arya was starting to get on with her despite being initially asked to kill her. The sudden out of focus appearance of the waif and the lack of any dialogue or sound aside from Crane's movements creates a very uncomfortable atmosphere. Turns out I was wrong about the face changing twist thing, but even still this chase sequence was pretty cool. It felt like a kind of Assassin's Creed 2 scenario with all the parkouring around the city to begin with, but it felt like something completely different when Arya's wound started to open again. Oh god, it was so painful watching her fall down those steps, not only because of the physical pain she must be feeling, but she's creating such a kerfuffle that it must be beyond embarrassment to be in a situation like this. Then the pace changes as she whimpers around the town filled with agony. I'm surprised she didn't start bleeding earlier. I mean, she was stabbed quite a few times and we don't see the blood again until quite late in the chase. Also, with the hysteria she's created, why is nobody getting all in her face telling her to clean up their fruit and veg? More to the point, what exactly was the purpose of her going to the Faceless Men after all that? What exactly has she learned aside from upping her game on her combat skills that will benefit her? I guess then that the Faceless Men are just assassins who keep the faces of those they kill. What a waste. The Brotherhood Without Banners makes an appearance as I predicted, but before that we have more time wasting with blokes fingering each other's bumholes. What the fuck, you guys? This is possibly one of the stupidest things I've seen on this show, and I've seen a lot of stupid things. The Hound then comes along and shits on them all for being so fucking pointless and meets our long lost friends Beric and Thoros. This section dropped so many obvious hints for Lady Stoneheart to make an appearance or something along those lines. It just got me stupid excited for, yes you guessed it, next week's episode. But that's a good thing. I'd rather that than not care about what happens next week, which I felt whilst watching Series 5. The dialogue in this section was written really well, especially Sandor's, which was quite frankly hilarious. I'm so happy he's back on the show, firstly because he is an awesome character, but secondly because his supposed death kept me from wondering about whether he'd make a return. This surprise and the amount of effort the writers put into this character just shows how well they can keep audiences interested in the show.
Enjoying yourself?
I prefer chicken.
Back in Meereen, Varys leaves us on a private mission. Oh my golly gosh, is he gonna... Okay, I should probably put a spoiler warning in here. Go and read Dance of Dragons and then come back, okay? Right, anyway. Holy shit, is he gonna kill Pycelle and Kevan? I might be wrong. Like I said in last week's review, the book events are slightly irrelevant in guessing what's going to happen now, but it's certainly a life or death situation that Varys is going into. Then we have that god-awful scene with Tyrion teaching the natives how to small talk, play games, tell jokes, and drink. God, this shit is so dull. This has exactly the same scenario as the one we saw in episode 3, for fuck's sake. Tyrion dosses around with some people he couldn't give two shits about until after some painfully awkward dialogue the crux of the story takes place. Only this episode has finally introduced the big battle that ended A Dance of Dragons. Why wasn't this at the end of Series 5? Barristan Selmy had to die so these pillocks could postpone one of the biggest cliffhangers in the story? God almighty. I tell you what though, it looks very pretty. Those boats slinging fire at the city and landscape shots are bloody gorgeous. The King's Landing section was probably my favourite of this week's episode. Finally, we see some bloody action. And I mean bloody in the literal sense sense. That death was really fucking grim. This made me quite happy, seeing as they've been putting off fighting each other for so long now. We could be seeing the beginnings of this violence. The absolute sting in the tail comes when we see Cersei and Qyburn sharing the exact same twisted smile as they waltz off back to Fairyland. Later on we see Cersei at a total loss of her position. Her son and the men who follow him now have full control over him doing what he likes, and worst of all, Clegane Bowl is now out of the question for this trial now that trials by combat are banned. Things are looking very dreary in the south for the crown, especially for this rumour Qyburn speaks of. Could this be the wildfire buried beneath the city we saw mentioned in the previous episodes? We'll have to wait and see. Podrick finally gets some dialogue before we are cheaply reminded of the times gone by between himself, Bronn and Tyrion. With Jaime and Brienne we have some very interesting dialogue delivered by some great performances as always, especially regarding whether they make love to each other before they have to kill each other like Jon Snow and Ygritte. I don't quite know how Blackfish arrived at the conclusion that Sansa is like her mother just from her handwriting, but Brienne's inclusion in this story is quite interesting. The politics of the situation aren't quite as detailed as that of the book from what I remember, but I see that Brienne makes this story that little bit more flavoursome, considering basically all of Jaime's story in Feast for Crows has now been pretty much covered in the show. It's really great seeing Jaime become the heartless warrior he's renowned for being when he interrogates Edmure. I think it's a shame the show didn't have Jaime bring a musician in to play Reigns of Castamere in order to convince Edmure to do his bidding like he does in the book, as he just kind of accepts Jaime's commands without a second thought. Then again, I'd do the same if one of the greatest knights in Westeros just told me he'd kill my family for his sister. The sequence after this was absolutely fantastic. It was great seeing Brynden Blackfish being overruled by his own army, clearly showing his stubbornness has gotten the better of him, and that making peace may actually be the right move now. His pride and reputation will be tainted forever because of this, but alas, he died, so it doesn't matter anyway. Or so we think. We didn't see him die, and in the book he escapes the siege. He might still be alive, but after what happened to Stannis, I wouldn't bank on it. So, did it suck? I think this is possibly the weakest episode of the series so far, but it was still good. I hope that we do find the purpose of Arya's misadventures with the Faceless Men at some point in the future, and I'm happy we can now focus on the more gruesome details of the story to come. What's more is that episode 9 is next week. Holy shit, the series is going fast. Not just that, but episode 9 for me is always that episode that has something immense happen at the end. I can't fucking wait. See you all next week. Here are those goddamn motherfucking piece of shit outtakes that I ate last night with some cold plums. Creates a very... I fucked up the line. The Brotherhood Without Banners makes an appearance as I predicted before, but no... Bleh. See you all next week. Here are those... Well, that's an outtake and all. I hope that we do find the purpose of Arya's misadventures with the Faceless Men at some point in the future, and I'm happy we can now focus on the moo cows.